right, welcome to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. Thanks for joining me. Glad to have you here. Welcome. Come on in. It was kind of hard for me to figure out what to talk about today because there's absolutely nothing going on in the news today. It's the slowest news cycle I've ever seen. Not really. We know what's going on. We know about the FBI raid on former President Donald Trump's home. So we're going to be talking about that for this whole episode. We're going to be talking about the ramifications, some of the conversations surrounding the raid. But before I get into all of that, you know what to do. I need you to like this. I need you to share this. Share it right now. Hit that share button. That helps me. Also, if you haven't already subscribed to my podcast, that needs to happen. Hit that subscribe button. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new episode. Also, you need to leave me a 5-star rating, regardless of whatever podcast app that you're using. But if you're using Apple Podcasts, then I especially need you to give me a 5-star rating. That helps me out immensely. And also, leave me a little bit of a review, just a couple sentences. I'm not asking you to write a novel. You don't need to write Moby Dick or the Count of Monte Cristo. Just a couple sentences just to tell people why you like this podcast so much. I appreciate all of that. That helps me out with the algorithms. So, let's just get into this. Let's get into this. I know you're waiting to hear about it. Now, you've already heard the news, I'm sure, unless you're living under a rock or in a cave in Afghanistan somewhere. You've already heard that the FBI served a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. Now, President Trump was not present when this happened. He was in New York dealing with some other legal issues. I'm not really going to get into that. I want to focus on this right here. And today, Attorney General Merrick Garland finally broke his silence. Today on Thursday, the 11th, the raid happened on Monday, and the Justice Department has been rather quiet, which makes sense. I mean, I actually expected it to take longer for them to make a statement, but Garland did something else that I didn't expect, and he's going to file a motion to unseal the warrant that was used to get permission to search Mar-a-Lago. Now, according to reports and according to people that I've talked to, the FBI got information from somebody on the inside. At least one person told them what documents were there. And the issue at hand, what they used to obtain the search warrant, is this ongoing issue with President Trump having taken documents from the White House and he's been keeping it with them. This is an issue because those documents are supposed to be turned over to the National Archives, and that hasn't been done yet. Although I think Trump's team did end up sending them some of the documents back earlier this year, and they've been in conversations about it, but he hasn't turned over all of them. So the FBI is using that to search his home. And like I said, the warrant is going to be unsealed, and I do think that this is a lot deeper than the documents that were supposed to go to the National Archives, and I'll explain that a little bit later. But as you can see, this isn't normal. Now, a lot of people are skeptical about the FBI is conducting this raid or serving the warrant, however you want to put it. I really don't care. There's some controversy over that, but a lot of people don't trust the FBI, especially on the right. And I think that skepticism is warranted. Now, that doesn't automatically mean that the Bureau is up to no good, but at the same time, you can't blame people for thinking that it's possible. So I'm going to list off a few reasons why it makes sense to be a little bit skeptical about what the FBI is doing. Now, for starters, the FBI has demonstrated a clear bias when it comes to the people that they choose to target. So this first reason has to do with Hillary Clinton and with Hunter Biden. Obviously, you remember the Hillary Clinton email scandal, but her emails, all that stuff, right? You know, she didn't turn over those emails. She destroyed some of them. She tried to use that bleach whatever, I can't remember what it was called anymore, but she had her own private server, no raid, even though she had documents that were supposed to have been turned over to the government. In fact, the FBI went out of their way to exonerate her, and I'm putting that in quotations. You remember FBI Director James Comey, former FBI Director James Comey, he basically exonerated her shortly before the 2016 election. So Trump is getting much harsher treatment than Clinton, and so far I don't really see a reason to justify that. I'm not seeing how it's different enough to where Clinton would not be raided and Trump would. Now, there's also Hunter Biden. That's President Joe Biden's son, and he's engaged in some pretty shady and suspicious conduct when it comes to his foreign business dealings, especially when it comes to the laptop issue. Now, you remember the activist media and social media suppressed that story before the 2020 election because they wanted to protect now President Joe Biden. But here's the thing. They say that there's a federal investigation into Hunter Biden. Okay, fine. But does anybody actually believe he's going to face any consequences, even if it's found that he committed a crime? Of course not. So, in my opinion, they're not really gunning for Hunter Biden. I think this is more for show. Whatever they find on him, it's not going to matter. He's the president's son, and he's not the political opposition. So that's reason one why people should be skeptical, because the FBI has shown that it does have a level of bias when it comes to who they go after. I'm not saying they have never gone after Democrats before, but in general, they're going to go after Trump before they go after anybody on their own side, and that's what I've been saying. And that leads me to the second reason. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, if you're going to be honest, and if you're going to look at the history of this whole situation, they've been gunning for Trump since forever, since 2016. Now, some of you might remember how they falsified a FISA warrant to spy on Carter Page, who was a member of Trump's campaign team. And they also, it came out earlier this year, or I think last year, that they actively participated in perpetuating the Russia collusion hoax. Remember that? Where they pretended that Trump was some Manchurian candidate and that he had been working with Russia to sway the results of the 2016 election. And they said that the election was illegitimate because Putin is the one that won the election for Trump, even though they don't like people questioning the 2020 election. But I digress. Even though there were agents that used the Steele dossier, remember Christopher Steele's dossier. Christopher Steele was an operative. He was a member of British intelligence. He was retired. And the Clinton campaign indirectly hired him to try to dig up dirt on Trump. Now, pretty much almost everything in that dossier was debunked. Remember the whole P-tape thing and, the Russian prostitutes that Trump was supposed to have had a dalliance with in Russia? Yeah, that didn't happen. And a lot of the sources that Steele used were Russian sources. So if anybody colluded with Russia, it was the Clinton campaign. But they still used it as a basis of the application that they filed to obtain that warrant. So it's clear to me that maybe not the whole FBI, but there were a lot of agents in the FBI that were acting politically. You remember Lisa Page and Peter Strzok? They were using their positions to prevent Trump from becoming president. You remember that text message exchange that they had? To me, that's only a microcosm of what's been going on with the Bureau as it relates to Trump. Now, lastly, we have the raid itself. Now, as I alluded to before, this is not something you would normally conduct a raid for or serve a warrant for. This is not normal. This tends to be usually more of a civil matter. Here's the thing. Pretty much every president has kept documents that they shouldn't have kept. It was this law. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Whatever. It's not really something that is enforced in this manner. As you can see, with Hillary Clinton, they didn't even bother to send agents after her. And no, she was not cooperating. She didn't turn everything over. And again, Trump's team had already been in conversations to negotiate the release of the documents. Now, personally, I think that they should have just given them over. There was no reason for them to keep them, and it allowed the FBI to have an excuse to serve a warrant and search Trump's home. That was a mistake, and I have no idea what Trump was thinking. I have no idea what his team was thinking. You know, one of my biggest gripes with Trump is that he doesn't always surround himself with the best people. He just doesn't. A lot of the people around him don't necessarily have his best interests at heart, and a lot of them seem not to not know what they're doing. Even so, even though they probably should have handed over the documents, this does not rise to the level of getting a search warrant and searching the home of a former president. This is unprecedented. Now, there is some debate as to whether Trump declassified those documents. I'm not seeing anything showing that he went through the proper process. I'm not even sure if that process is really hammered out. So this is going to be something that comes up later. Like, did Trump declassify these documents? This is going to be litigation. But I'm going to tell you right now, if they if this is all they found, and they just found a bunch of documents that he should have turned over, but he didn't, this ain't going to be pretty for Democrats. It just isn't. And I'm going to talk more about this in another segment, but there is another reason why they serve this warrant, and I don't think it has anything to do with those documents. But if it turns out that that's all they found, this is not going to be good for the Bureau, and it's not going to be good for the Democrats. And it could be really good for Trump. I'll talk more about that in the next segment. I'll see you on the other side.